go back. Oops. Next, thank you to our panel for joining us today and for sharing their insights, their experiences. If today's meeting is anything like our prep meeting, I'm looking forward to an engaging, informative conversation. So thank you to our panel for coming, starting with our moderator, Demetrius Spanius, the president of Land and Sea Real Estate, and Elisa Sandoval, the economic development director for the town of Bedford, and Jay Sturdivant, the project executive for Erling Construction, and Jared Auclair, the professor at Northeastern University and also the director of executive training and biotechnology programs. And Jared, I think I got your title right. I know you have quite a number of titles, but we're going to get into everybody's background when we get into the conversation. But before we do that, I do want to thank our series sponsors. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. So thank you to AHP Architects, the BSC Group, and Reamer and Bronstein. We greatly appreciate your support. And I put this agenda up here for a couple of reasons. One is to let everyone know that we plan to adjourn at 1 o'clock. Two, we will have time, hopefully we'll have time for questions if you're able to put them into the chat box. But we also have a few questions that I sent to the panel that were given to us when people registered for the event. And three, there is a slight change, and Ultragenics will be joining the conversation for a few minutes. If many of you people know that Ultragenics is going through a major development and expanding to the town of Bedford. So they're gonna jump on to the conversation halfway through, roughly, to talk a little bit about their project as well too. So we look forward to that, and so that'll be about halfway through the conversation. And then also we do have a number of upcoming Middlesex 3 events, including what's happening in Lexington. Just to let you know, there's a lot happening. Our next month, we're going to be doing an innovative housing discussion. And I think we talked a little bit about that during our virtual networking. And then in February, we're going to have a Future of Defense roundtable where we look at workforce needs and the development, the future of defense in the region. And if anyone has ideas or thoughts of other projects, other discussion topics, please let us know. If anyone's interested in being on any of our panels, please, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have our members involved, engaged, in whether it's the virtual networking or whether it being part of the panel. So I think with that, I'm going to stop my share, and hopefully we have, okay, so we have our panel set. And with that, oh, except for Elisa, I'm going to get Elisa on the phone, but I'm going to hand it over to Demetrius at this point to start our conversation.
Great. Thank you very much. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Demetrius Spanias. I'm the owner and president of Land and Sea Real Estate, based here in Andover, but we work throughout New England. And very active in Middlesex 3, and we started the idea of this webinar series probably a couple of years ago. Stephanie and I first started talking about this, and as the COVID pandemic happened this past year, many of the topics have changed and shifted, and we felt it was even more important to start talking about how the economy, how businesses, how transportation, and how all of this is affecting the Middlesex 3 region insofar as real estate. And we came up with topics that would be important. And I think this is in particularly a very good topic for now, especially considering kind of the mass exodus out of Boston and Cambridge into the suburbs of not only the populace but also of businesses. So before we get into anything else, I'd like to actually have our panelists just give us a little brief introduction to themselves. So, Jared, we're going to start with you.
Awesome, thank you, and thanks for having me. I'm Jared Auclair. I'm a professor at Northeastern University. Actually, my office, where I'm sitting right now, is at the Innovation Campus in Burlington, Mass. I'm also the Associate Dean of Professional Programs and Graduate Affairs for the College of Science, so I oversee all the graduate programs. Director of the Biopharmaceutical Analysis and Training Lab, which is our training lab in my lab at Burlington. We also do research there. It's an internationally recognized training center for the Asia Pacific Economic Corporation and a number of other international organizations. So I travel the world training regulators and bringing them here to train with hands-on experience. I mean, that's our bread and butter at Northeastern, right? Experiential education. Right. So that's what we do. And also in my spare time for HaHa's, I direct the Northeastern COVID-19 testing lab. So I'm responsible for processing all the, not me personally, but my team is responsible for processing all of the COVID tests for the university so that we can remain open and safe. We've spun it up in 6 weeks of torture. And just so you all know, as a member of the mature workforce and with many connections into industry and experience in industry, the mature workforce does not want to be in Cambridge. We want to be in your communities where we have a better quality of life and our families can flourish. I'll end there.
Wow. So should we consider the COVID testing, is that a hobby?
Yeah, basically it's a hobby, exactly. And we only do, 6,000 or 7,000 samples per 24-hour period. So 7 days a week, 365.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Thank you, Jared. Jay, please.
I'm Lawrence J. Sturdivant. I'm with Erlin Construction. I work with the Advanced Technology Life Science Group. Basically, we do all the lab construction, is what that translates into. And Erlin's was founded in 1977. It's a full service general contractor. I just happen to run the work within the lab science group. My background is I've spent a tremendous amount of time at the Longwood medical area, not only building medical stuff, but also doing an awful lot of labs, both there and at Harvard Medical School and different facilities like that over a fairly long period of time, everything from a BSL-1 to a BSL-4, and obviously production laboratory work such as factories and manufacturing facilities that need to have clean rooms and those type of facilities. So that's generally my background.
Great. Thank you so much. Lisa.
Hi, my name is Elisa Sandoval. I'm the Economic Development Director for the town of Bedford. I've worked in economic development for the past 6 years, and before that I was a senior planner and project manager at VHB, so working on community master plans and transportation permitting. And then before that I worked in municipal planning in California, actually. So kind of have a mix of public and private sector experience, which I think adds to my role here in economic development in Bedford. Most recently, my focus has been on streamlining permitting, and in particular, how does that apply to life science companies and helping them set up here, move into Bedford without, too many impediments, making sure it's a transparent and streamlined process. So just general overview of myself and my role here.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, welcome, and I'm delighted that we're going to be able to do this today. So I have to ask the first burning question, or as we used to call the $64,000 question, depending on how old you are. And I'm just going to basically probably throw this out to Jared. Can you please kind of dissuade the fears about the zombie apocalypse that biotech is eventually going to cause, at least according to science fiction and popular belief?
Yeah, I'm happy to address that.
And I mean that as kind of a serious question. And I'm joking, but at the same time, with Middlesex 3, we have a very learned populace. We have a lot of people who are very educated. Although I think one of the challenges that the municipalities are going to face is the whole idea of maybe selling it to the communities, because I think maybe the communities at whole don't quite understand what life science is and what it isn't. And so, in all seriousness, so please tell us how you're not the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, we can do that for sure. And I can start by telling you that I'm a movie buff, right? And lots of the movies that I have watched in my many years are sort of about how the chemical industry dumped a bunch of chemicals in the water stream, right? And then you get a bunch of people who get sick, or you have higher incidence of cancer and things of this nature. I'm here to tell you that is not how life sciences functions. I don't think that's how the chemical industry functions anymore either, but I won't speak for them. We are highly regulated. Everything that we do is 100% safe. We don't dump anything. We don't we don't muck around with people's DNA to make zombies, although I suppose one could, although it's not as easy as you might think.
It's a hobby.
It's a hobby, exactly. So everything's really regulated, right? I mean, our bio waste is taken care of properly, disinfected, killed, sanitized, burned. All of our staff is super trained. I mean, if one of the things about the life sciences in terms of safety, if you don't have a safe, the same thing my mom always taught me growing up, if I didn't have a safe and if I didn't have a clean room, I wasn't going to be as efficient. If you don't have a safe and clean laboratory, you're just not going to do good science, and you're not going to be able to produce any products and go to market, right? So it's in the best interest of the industry to function safely and efficiently. But more than that, none of us want to be the cause of the zombie apocalypse. It seems that we have enough problems in the world with COVID and everything else, so we don't need to add to that. So 100% safe. I've worked with HIV in my life. I've worked with Lou Gehrig's disease. I've worked with all kinds of different viruses and infectious agents and pathogens, and everything we do is 100% safe, right? At the end of the day, we want to keep ourselves safe so we don't make our families sick, and we're going to take that same approach with the community, and we do take that same approach with the community.
So then, Jared, can you give me maybe a 2-sentence explanation of what biotech and life sciences are?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's 2 seconds. That's really fast. That elevator pitch, I don't know about that.
Give me the elevator pitch.
No, right? So biotechnology is actually, in general, is using live cells to create a product, in most cases a drug. That's the actual definition of biotechnology. Generally speaking, though, life sciences is much more than that, right? And we also clump within the life sciences pharmaceutical industries. So traditionally, historically, somebody like a Pfizer wouldn't be considered a biotech company, whereas somebody like Amgen would be considered a biotech company. Those lines are all blurred, so we all do everything now. So life sciences is generally speaking about making safe and effective drugs that can go to patients, understanding human biology and disease. It also does include, that people don't think about, agriculture. We have agricultural biotech, and which is really an important thing that people should think about more, including the university, which we're trying. So in general, it's about how we study life, which is anything that has carbon, basically, in it, and try to make everybody's lives better. It's all about improving quality of life.
Great. No, thank you so much. And so from that, I want to kind of throw this over to Jay. And so we were just talking about safety and the logistics of that. And Jay, maybe you can kind of talk a little bit as far as the construction goes and some of the construction challenges and logistics insofar as safety, insofar as protection, insofar as the kind of the quality of the construction needed for this type of development as opposed to a standard office.
Sure. So what we are trying to do in the field when we build a construction is we have to essentially understand the process by which this facility is going to operate. And then we run into things like ISO 9000 has a section on manufacturing. We have what's called GMP, which most contractors think of in a different way, but GMP in this sense is good manufacturing practices. And we need to merge that with good laboratory practices, because at the end of the day, when we're done with a building, we have to incorporate these two, especially if we're going to do any type of validation of the building. And all of that kind of precludes what we're going to do on the job site and how we're going to handle some of the aspects of construction. And so the most important thing is to get your contractor involved as soon as possible, and your design team obviously involved. And once you're starting to do some space planning, you really need a design staff and a contractor on board, because they're going to do a lot of different things for you. And a lot of it comes down to experience. What we're all going to see in the next couple of years is there's going to be an awful lot of inexperienced contractors trying to get into this market, because the other markets are going to shrink. This market's projected to expand. So we need to be in a situation when we're thinking about contractors and design firms, we want contractors and design firms with experience. Now, Orland's a prime example. They have 30 years of experience in the life science market, right? And there's other contractors out there also. But by the same token, when you're thinking about the project, find a couple of experienced contractors and design professionals and sit down with them do an interview with them, make sure the team matches up with the product you're trying to put out. So once we get past hiring the contractor, we want to start thinking about the buildings. And presently, what we're seeing an awful lot of is repurposing of existing buildings, because we have a lot of buildings that are in a condition that no one's in them presently. We've got a lot of developers who spend a lot of money on them. They want to repurpose them. So when we start looking at them from the contractor standpoint, we want to look at the first and foremost, the infrastructure. Is the electricity there? Typically on a lab building versus an office building is 3 times as much electricity that the users are going to need, right? Structurally, we're typically looking for a building that is somewhere around 100 pounds per square foot, okay? So typically an office building is less than half of that. So it's a much different animal when we're going to talk about elevated life science. So buildings that have a slab on grade, obviously we can utilize that. We get into different things, gas, is there gas? How much gas are we going to need for our production facility, as opposed to if we're doing a medical research facility? Water, again, some of these production activities require a lot of water. Others do not. So you got to understand if the infrastructure is in the street, because that's going to affect your overall costs. Then we get into storage requirements, right? Are we going to discharge? Are we going to pre-treat? Those types of things. So we have to look at the overall infrastructure of the site, right? And then we start looking at different things like floor-to-floor heights in an existing building. And obviously, the higher, the better, to get into it. And then we got to start thinking again, get back to exhausting and air changes and things like this that are much different than an office environment. So frankly, you got to look at the building, look at the user. If we're just trying to generically set up a building for a lab, then we need to really just look at the floor to floor and how much infrastructure the developer is going to put in before they actually physically rent it to a client. And that's really what we kind of look at globally on an elevator pitch. I hope I was concise.
No, that was great. And so, and then kind of on this same vein, I'm going to go to Elisa on this, is that we've talked about kind of what biotech is not, but what it really is, and its benefit to society. And we've talked about some of the construction challenges, and maybe you can give us a little bit about what either some challenges you think you have faced, or in dealing with your municipality on this development, and maybe some ideas on benefits to the community as a whole that you see.
Sure. So, I just want to kind of echo what Lawrence was talking about. In Bedford, we are seeing a lot of, conversion of kind of these older light industrial buildings, kind of these, kind of 1-story, at the most 2-story, not even very large, and they're being converted from that use to lab. So I think, I think it's just like a comfort level with seeing that, that transition of, what were kind of lighter industrial uses to lab, and just making sure that your permitting is set up, to facilitate that, right? So that it's not something where, you're necessarily putting up roadblocks. So our Board of Health, they follow the federal, National Institute of Health guidelines and their biosafety regulations. So I think, following something that's a nationally recognized protocol, I think is helpful, especially as life science is looking at our community, to show that we're following kind of more federal recognizable regulations. And another thing is just really to kind of highlight the areas where you're looking to expand and have more development. So, through our town meeting, our town select board, we have adopted Chapter 43D, expedited permitting for 2 larger sites. And one of the sites is actually going to be the site of the new Ultragenics biomanufacturing facility. So I think really kind of like figuring out where you want to direct development, where development is appropriate for life science. And we find that pretty much all our industrial zones are appropriate for life science uses. So we, the town has has their zoning in line with that life science uses are allowed by right. It doesn't have to go through a special permit process. They're already having to go through regulations with the, the Board of Health regulations, any fire permitting. So we feel like there's plenty of checks and balances on life sciences, and we don't need to have zoning be another hurdle to that. I hope that answers your question on, things that we see in Bedford.
Great. And this kind of ends up going into the next phase of questions, which I wanted to get into, which was a perfect setup. And I'm going to throw this to Jared, but it's really kind of to all of you. And I'm going to quote the Spice Girls here and say, so tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I mean, what is biotech looking for in these communities? I mean, just be, why do you want to come here? Why Middlesex 3? Why get done with Cambridge? What are you looking for location?
Yeah, perfect. And I'll answer that from two different angles, as a practitioner of biotechnology and as a father of a family of a practitioner of biotechnology. So I have an office in Boston in the Northeast campus there, and I have an office in Burlington where I'm sitting right now. You have to, there's no traffic right now, but you have to force me to go into Boston in normal times, right? I live 20 miles from each location, and to get into the city, it takes me a good hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours. To get out here, it takes me 45 minutes. So from a family perspective, we're looking for all the amenities that you might imagine within walking distance to some sort of public transportation, major routes, which you all have, because the place that I'm sitting right now has a great access to the different intersections. I can go to the Burlington Mall. I can go, wherever. Good restaurants, trendy, lots of. The misnomer is that we're all introverted. No, it's actually true though. We're all introverted nerds, which is true, but we also tend to lean on the trendy side, and like our restaurants like to go to the bar, craft beer, all that kind of great stuff. So all the amenities that you might expect to be within walking distance, or at least have a community where that's in walking distance. From the practitioner side, what we really, really want is for communities to understand that we are working with what we know today, right? And like every industry. So lots of those things historically have been small molecules, then we transitioned to large molecule drugs. Now we're looking at cell and gene therapies, personalized medicine. So basically what I'm saying is, the industry moves fast and we have no idea what's coming next. So we need maximum flexibility, both in building type infrastructure and rules, laws, and regulations, right? And the ability for the community to adapt to how the industry is adapting, right? We don't want to have the next best thing coming along and we can't work on it because of some law or regulation. Doesn't mean that we want you to change all your rules to meet our needs, right? We should be open to those conversations so those things can progress in a meaningful and productive way. But as Jay was mentioning, good manufacturing practices, right? Like if you think about COVID-19, we weren't going to be making vaccines for COVID-19, a year ago, as far as the industry rumors were going, right? Now we need to go to mass production. So that means we need facilities that we can change on a dime to do that, right? And that will still meet all the regulations and standards that are necessary to produce a safe and effective product. So flexibility and all the amenities we want near us, and then openness to conversation, right? We're your neighbors, we're your friends, we're your partners in making humanity a better place, or better.
So that being it's great. So that being the case, and this is for all you. What does the perfect campus look like? What does the perfect situation look like? The subcommunity office building. There are other things around it. And then what are the, insofar as the towns go, what do they need to kind of deliver? What type of space? What type of acreage? What's kind of your perfect world? So I'm kind of throwing this out to whomever wants to answer.
I'll say one thing and then I'll leave it to the others to say the real answer. One thing that I think is interesting is, historically speaking, lab space obviously is more expensive to construct. I'm not naive to that, but getting access to lab space and enough lab space is always a challenge, right? So in the COVID times, we don't need to be in the office so much. We can do the same thing that you all can do on Zoom, and then maximize our lab space, which I think is pretty exciting exciting endeavor or opportunity for the industry to really be able to expand the types of research and programs that we develop. So I'm pretty excited about how that evolves as the next months come along.
So, Jay, Alyssa, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say this, what we're seeing from most of our clients today and what we're seeing is a campus type atmosphere is what we're seeing. Lots of lab space, but also lots of collaborative open space, lots of glass in these labs, lots of availability to meet with your peers and discuss and conspire and come up with good things that will help mankind, right? So all of that comes into play. So when we talk about amenities and things like that, it's almost like when you look at places like 3rd Street in Burlington's a good example. You look at EMD's campus we're building right now, another big kind of open parts of the building. And then, you look at Watertown, where Boylston Properties is doing a really large mixed-use project, a lot of which is a large lab component. So when you get into that, and it gets back to what Jared said, people want to go to work, they want to step out the door, they want to walk across the street to the bar, they want to go to the local restaurant. In the old days, we built these great industrial parks, right? And we put all the industrial stuff together. We didn't put any restaurants down there, we didn't put any housing down there. We basically kind of set it off by itself, right? And that's not the norm we're seeing. And then to add to it a little bit, what we hear and what we see is that most people working in these laboratory environments want to work in a nice open lab. They don't want to be in the old style where you have one window at the end of a bench, right? So
yeah, don't put us in the dungeon, Jay. We're over that.
Right, exactly. So and then the other thing we're seeing is modular. Everything is modular these days. We want to be able to take that group that just found the cure for COVID, and we don't want to move them into another part of the building. We want to be able to slide all their furniture and labs and even some of their walls and reconfigure it in a modular atmosphere. So basically we need a screw gun and we take it all apart, we reformulate it on the other side of the lab. And that's really what we're seeing. But the big thing is, people want a campus atmosphere. And that's kind of, just like in college, you rolled out of your class, I went to UMaine, so you go over to the Bears Den, grab a sandwich, after hours you're grabbing a beer, then you're going back to your apartment, right? And that's kind of the similar atmosphere folks are looking for today. So.
Yeah, and I would say that that's super important also from the aspect of the practitioner, right? That, we don't think about our jobs as 9 to 5. We do what this experiment dictates. So, if we have to be there during dinner time, we want to walk out and get dinner.
Yeah, I would just echo that, we are hearing from, life science companies that they would like to see kind of more restaurants, more places to go, even, not even just for their workers, but, for corporate events, like if they have, leadership come into town, they want, a nice restaurant to take them to. So we've been working on that in Bedford, just as part of the Crosby Drive industrial area there. We introduced an industrial mixed use permitting process where we were actually able to permit close to 6 or 7 new restaurants there in the last few years. So we're trying to, slowly but surely bring restaurants into that area. Our other biotech area on Wiggins Ave is already kind of close to our main street where a lot of restaurants are. So they don't have as much of a need for that in that area. They really like having access to the Minuteman bike path. A lot of biotech workers seem to be very avid bicyclists. For some reason, they seem to go together. So, I think having bicycle facilities, recreational trails, whenever the planning board is looking at, new larger developments, they always encourage bike racks, whether that's, covered bike racks, shower facilities. That's always something that is, looked on very well. And I think in the long run, it's going to be really helpful for the workers that end up working there too. So I think, amenities are restaurants, but they're also recreational amenities. They're also, fitness centers, daycare. We have a lot of daycare centers in Bedford. And I think that's been a real benefit for people that are coming to work here.
So Lisa, from what so what I'm gleaning from what you're saying then at this point is that really, I think for success, maybe the municipalities need to look at it as almost a comprehensive development, and maybe think of the life sciences, the biotech as the center of it. And then you have all the other amenities on top of it. You have the office, but then you have the retail, you have the destination, you have the restaurants, and maybe even potentially housing.
Right, exactly.
Right.
We do have actually a few multifamily developments out in the Middlesex Turnpike area that were permitted in the 2000 to 2010. So I think we have about 500 or 600 units actually there right now. And we're also looking at mixed use developments along Great Road, which is the main street. So I think that's always, you know, something that is going to be a piece of the puzzle as well.
Great, and just as one last quick follow-up question to you, Elisa, on this, is that, you know, I know you were working with the state on the 43D developments, and if you mind giving like a kind of a 2-sentence definition of what that is and how that would benefit life sciences.
Sure. So Chapter 43D is a state statute where the municipality is basically committing to a timeline for completing all the land permitting. And this is really a benefit for especially complicated large projects. So the projects have to be at least 50,000 square feet with a certain area of land. And so all the permitting, all the land permitting must be completed within 120 days. Generally speaking, we complete our land permitting much quicker than that. But it also sets up a process where, you know, there's a single point of contact designated for the company in the municipality. There's also a development review team that's already set up, and the development review team meets with the applicant at the very beginning of the project, goes over everything. So it really sets up like a review process that's very, you know, it's kind of like more transparent and so I think the company as well. And I think it's really helpful too, especially when you're looking at larger developments, because, you know, companies aren't really only just looking at, you know, Bedford from Massachusetts. They might be a company in North Carolina, they might be a company in California, and they're looking at Bedford, and, you know, this is just a signal to them that yes, we're serious and we're going to follow this protocol and it's going to be expedited. So I think it's a way of kind of signaling to the, you know, basically to the larger community that, you know, we're serious about permitting.
That's beautiful, great. And that's actually a perfect setup to bring our special guest on. And I'll let Stephanie do that in the introduction.
Yeah, that's not me. I just want to jump back on.
You're always special, Stephanie.
Thank you. I wanted to introduce Gil Stevens, the Senior Director of Capital Projects for Ultragenics. And he's been spearheading the project happening in Bedford. So I wanted to bring him on and welcome him him and Ultragenics to the community as well too, and to hear more about the work that they're doing. So with that, I think he's on. And we'll just need him to show his video. So Gil, thank you and welcome.
Good afternoon, folks. Nice to see you. Thank you for inviting me today to be part of your discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And Demetrius, I'll turn it over to you as well too to lead the conversation.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Gil. How are you?
Good. Excellent.
So, you know, why don't you just kind of give us a little background about what your project is right now, and, you know, maybe some of your needs and maybe some of your challenges, and what your hopes are for the project in the future.
Yeah, great. First, a little bit about myself. Actually, long-term resident. I was born in Cambridge here, and went to Mass Maritime Academy. Actually worked for Pfizer, which was previously Wyeth, previously Genetics Institute, over the past almost 30 years now in biopharmaceutical research, development, manufacturing here locally. I made the decision to leave Pfizer back about 1.5 years ago to join Ultragenics, you know, specifically because, you know, really compelling mission that the company is on in terms of patients and with rare disease and ultra rare disease. and really just being unrelenting on that focus to patient access to new therapies. So, thought it was a right time in my career to leave Pfizer, spent a good deal of that in Andover, large campus up there to help the company, really with its first endeavor in internal cGMP manufacturing for both clinical and commercial gene therapies. So I mention that because it was a unique experience for me joining a very small company with big aspirations in the patient-focused space, and trying to apply my years of experience with Pfizer and taking a small biotech company late 80s through an entire growth cycle there to kind of really starting over and applying some of the lessons learned. I will mention also, Alyssa, I don't know if I mentioned this before to you, but I also sat on Andover Town Economic Development Council for 3 years as a key industry voice at the table in terms of the things that companies like ours were interested in terms of developing the economic base in that area. So so when I joined Ultragenics, as I said, the key mission was to internalize manufacturing for the company. Really, there's been an explosion in viral vector manufacturing to support gene therapies. Most of that is coming in the way of CDMOs, contract manufacturing organizations, which we enjoy really strong partnerships with some of those companies. But at the same time, it limits our ability to move quickly and develop our portfolio of products and really focused on speed to market. And so strategically, it was really important for the company to move forward with an internal manufacturing capability. And also just from a scientific standpoint, having close co-location regionally with our research and development groups is important, because it really is a new modality for the industry. We're learning a lot, around the development of these medicines, the delivery through the clinical trials that we're going through, and then also just the process development and how to really commercialize and manufacture the products. So we when I joined about 1.5 years ago, we were just doing conceptual engineering on what this facility could look like. We're interested in some sites that we had targeted. However, those really didn't pan out. So at the beginning of 2020, January 2020, we set off in earnest with a site search, very rigorous site search. Probably definitely looked at more than 100 locations, both greenfield and existing properties that could be retrofitted. There were many factors that influenced us. One of the probably the biggest ones again was, drive time to our existing operations, and making sure that our colleagues felt comfortable just jumping in a car and going from one site to another site, and that will promote in the future really good, strong collaboration in the development of our science and technology. So with that in mind, we kind of had this 9 to 12 radius from Cambridge, where our research is centered in Cambridge now. We have some operations in Woburn as well, but we really kind of opened the door wide, in that 9 to 12 region, just to again support the drive times. We had a goal of less than 30 minutes drive time, and we're careful because we took that outside of the commute period, because how things were before COVID here. You couldn't go 2 miles in Cambridge in 20 minutes, so we're just looking at during the daytime hours, core business hours, could people communicate between sites within a reasonable amount of time? So that was a really important consideration to us. And then probably many of you are aware, this type of operation, we really have a wide range of talent needs in terms of education background. It's everything from entry-level manufacturing jobs to master's and PhD degree scientists that come together to manufacture these therapies. So, you know, a location, you know, close to the city, but outside the city was attractive to attract a really diverse population of folks. You know, obviously in the recent past, we've seen this big insurgence into the city with, you know, especially young professionals and, you know, college graduates. You know, for this operation, that environment kind of is there, it exists, and we're not looking to compete with that, right? We're looking really for, you guys just catching the last bit of your conversation, really, we're hitting on a lot of the points where, you know, it does afford some kind of, you know, concessions and you know, hotels, restaurants, but at the same time, it allows for easy access. And we really liked, you know, the fact that, you know, in the Route 3 corridor, 93 corridor, 95 corridor, having easy accessibilities off of one of those corridors was important to us, both from a colleague standpoint and attracting and retaining talent, and whether, you know, there's people that choose to live in more rural communities or they choose to live in the city communities, this site offers, you know, folks the ability, you know, to choose which they would want. And so, you know, just based on the mixed and diverse colleague talent pool that we're trying to attract, we really liked the, you know, the suburban type location for this particular operation. And then, you know, I'd say, you know, some of the other factors, you know, we really were looking for a greenfield site. We took a look at a lot of existing properties, and, you know, we had a concept of what we wanted this facility to look like. And in most cases, we were making big compromise on trying to fit our program into an existing footprint. And so, you know, this particular location, you know, not a lot of inventory out there actually at this stage and around, you know, the 128 belt, but we were just thrilled to find this location that would have give us the ability really to make the vision of what we want our facility to look like come to life, and not have to make you know, a huge compromise in what we wanted to do. So we're thrilled to find a greenfield site that could support what that facility needs to be.
Beautiful. No, that's great to hear. And I guess that kind of actually leads me to what would be really my big last question. And this is really for all of you, which is, how can the municipalities help? What can the municipalities do? And Elisa, you could take it from that point of view, or you can even say, what do you have to offer yourself as, you know, what does Bedford have to offer? But really kind of for all of you, what would make this type of development better? What can the towns do to attract you, and what can it do to make it easier? Anyone can just jump on in.
Yeah, I just want to say the responsiveness has been absolutely stellar from, you know, Alyssa and the other members of the Bedford town. And you'd be surprised, actually, very surprised. Not all communities are like that. You know, we started out, you know, and I engaged towns directly in terms of, you know, what does the city or town offer in terms of new development that is coming forward. You know, obviously, you know, our brokers help us quite a bit, and our other partners in doing this. But, you know, we originally reached out because sometimes, you know, there's no visibility. You know, they don't have those properties in their listings, right? Because they're emerging sites and towns are working in economic development. And, you know, we had a number of towns just not even respond, you know, believe it or not, in this day and age. So I found that pretty surprising, but I'll tell you that the folks in Bedford were just phenomenal. Even the first site visit there out on the side of the road with Sarah and Alyssa coming out to, you know, to talk about the town and the capabilities. So that was really important to us, and important to, you know, our executive leadership on the West Coast. You know, we're Ultragenics is based in Biomarin County in north of San Francisco, and, you know, obviously they're key stakeholders in significant, serious investment for the company. And, knowing that the town was that proactive at partnering with us and really helping us build the business case and ultimately get that business case approved was critically important.
I think one of the other items that's really important from a development standpoint is that the town is flexible in its zoning requirements and maybe preemptively look at what some of these repurposed properties, because as we know, and as Gil said, there's not a lot out there, right? So when we're talking about property in general, we should maybe take a look at the town globally at what they have for properties and what properties are heading towards the point they're going to be repurposed, right? And kind of do a 5-year outlook on and kind of target the ones, and then maybe figure out what, in the current zoning you could allow there, or what minor modifications you could make to zoning so you could put in some type of a lab or a lab production facility. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I kind of talked a little bit about this before, but, I think the permitting and zoning, that's kind of what the municipality has control over. And so that really kind of should be a focus area. And we really did look at all our industrial district and made sure that life science activities were allowed by right. And we have seen a lot of these smaller buildings be, repurposed for, startup biotechs from older industrial buildings. So I think that, that's been really great because we've seen neighborhoods kind of revitalized based on the infusion from the biotech sector. And then, just to Gil's point, I think that, just working really closely with life science companies is at the beginning stages, but also, as they're, even after they're set up, really, helping them get access to resources like the commuter shuttles that Middlesex 3 provides, like workforce development grants through the state, and Middlesex Community College has been a great resource as well. We're really excited about a new program called B2 Life Job Training Program, which we're partnering with Burlington on to transition workers that have been impacted by the pandemic to life science and healthcare fields. So I think that, it's not just the beginning, stage of them getting set up, but just helping them to be successful and to thrive after they've opened as well.
I think open-mindedness, willing to communicate, partnership, and just for my own self-promotion, that was a lot about training and workforce development and making those connections, because I'm right down the road from Bedford.
And now I know Jared.
That's my job, right?
That's
so
good.
We can do that, and then cell and gene therapies is my stick.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
It really is critically important. Is one of the things that makes Eastern Massachusetts attractive is the industry cluster that we enjoy here, and the investment that Massachusetts has made in building this up over decades in terms of biopharmaceutical. And as now we're expanding again, likely the opportunities for our company, for Pfizer's, for Sanofi's, to go to each other to find talent, it's not going to be there, right? Everybody's looking for talent. We're all expanding it now. We're going through a period of growth. So, having these relationships with the academic community in terms of all the different levels of jobs that we need is critically important. And that we can support that expansion through seeding, new growth like ours with, some experience from that community. But also we really need to focus on new colleagues joining life sciences sector and providing the training and competency of what they need in order to support that expansion here in Eastern Massachusetts.
Great. Oh, thank you. I'm going to bring Stephanie back on. Because I think she may have one or two things from the audience. Stephanie?
I do have a few things from the audience. And first, Gil, thank you for joining us as well, too. I appreciate it, and welcome to the community, and look forward to continuing the conversation. So we have a few questions, and I think I'll throw them out to anybody, I guess, because I think anyone could answer them as well. But the first one is, are the sizes of the facilities in terms of the number of employees and or square foot changing as life science companies migrate away from urban areas?
I could answer some of that. So when we see our customers come in the door, we either have very large customers or very small customers. And when you think of lab clients, everybody thinks of the large companies like Ultragenics and those guys. And really, the majority of the market is made up by much smaller players. And so the startup companies are usually looking for 1,000 to 5,000 square feet. And then we get into the mid-levels who are anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000, or and then you start to get into these medium-sized companies that are 20 to 40,000. So when you're developing a property, chances of renting to a Ultragenics is a much lower possibility than saying having 3, 4, 5, 6 different customers renting from you in that particular development. So a lot of that is something you need to take into consider if you're going to try to repurpose a building to a core and shell. You need to keep in mind that you probably are not going to have one large client in there. It would be more likely that you would have multiples.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And what we've seen in Bedford is that, especially the startup companies, even later stage startup companies, biotech companies they're opening up in a 10,000 square foot building, refitted from a former industrial building. And they're, being very successful in that. And, in one case, I think it's, Formulatrix, which opened up in a 20,000 square foot building, is now looking to buy another building across the street, which is 10,000 square feet, so they can expand and have 30,000 square feet, and they don't want to move. So I think that that's kind of an interesting trend of like the smaller biotech companies really kind of eating up space around here too. So it doesn't seem to be a size limit.
Wonderful. I've got a few more questions if I can throw them out as well too. And Erin over at the Lexington Chamber asked, Jared talked about the mature workforce liking the suburbs, but my understanding is the attraction of Cambridge is an appeal to the early career professionals and the need to hire many. Many of them are entry-level positions. So which one wins out? Is there a winner?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're going to see over the next decade or so that, a lot of the younger people like to be in Cambridge because it's Cambridge, it has that atmosphere. That's great, but there's still a fair chunk of young people who were like me, who the thought of working in Cambridge was just too overwhelming, and the suburbs are more my speed, right? So that mixed with the fact that people, practitioners like myself, who are, yes, I do consider myself a mature workforce, don't want to be in Cambridge, right? We don't want to commute, we don't want to deal with any of that. Also, the industry, there's different pieces of the industry, right? There's research and development, not in the development of a building, but in the development of a drug or product, right? And lots of those things we tend to think about happening in Cambridge, but there's the more manufacturing type jobs, which are not sort of what my grandfather's type of manufacturing is, still a pretty highly technical, I mean, Gil can tell you just as well as I can, it's a very technical skill set that you need, and lots of those types of opportunities are suited for the mature workforce or underrepresented minorities to start there and expand their careers, through another program that we have, that Northeastern has with Metal 6, the associate's and master's degree, sort of aimed at doing that, right? So, I think at the end of the day, the world is your oyster here in this region of the state, and anything outside of the greater Boston area. I mean, we are the biotech hub of the world, but there's no real estate in Cambridge that, is appealing to lots of us workers to go to. So we want to utilize the rest of the state. And this is a perfect, you can't get any better than this outside of Cambridge in terms of access and amenities and all kinds of things.
Well, I'm just going to jump in there for that as well, and just kind of echo what what Jared is saying is that, you know, all these communities in the Middlesex 3 region, I mean, we're not that far outside of, you know, the Boston, Cambridge area. So it's not like, you know, not to throw Oklahoma under the bus, but it's not like we're in the middle of Oklahoma and you're, you know, 3 or 4 or 7 hours from the next closest, you know, urban center. You know, you're very close. You do have that amenities within a very short, you know, within a half-hour distance.
So I'm going to throw out a couple more questions, and all my questions seem to be coming from municipalities as well, too. Melissa from the town of Burlington has a question for Ultragenics. So how do we reach out to life science companies in California looking to grow in Massachusetts?
A great question. Yeah, I will say, a lot of folks watch the newspaper, right? So, believe it or not, those single headlines, company X decides to build, gene therapy manufacturing in North Carolina or Colorado, or they're just everywhere and they get sent around, right? Extended email chains. Oh, look what our competitors are doing. Should we be doing this, right? So I think really, getting out there and kind of the marketing of what Massachusetts offers is important. I obviously, like I said, I've enjoyed a long career here in biopharmaceutical manufacturing, and I think Massachusetts has a ton to offer. In competing with some of these other industry clusters that are emerging across the country. So, really being out in I'm sure similar to Massachusetts, where we have bio conferences where we're attracting young companies. We want to be out there in getting exposure in terms of what Massachusetts can offer. Because it is very competitive, and companies in California or other states are looking at the options across the entire country of where to seed these types of operations.
I'm gonna jump in on this as well real quickly, and it's almost and part of it's a praise for Elisa and for the town of Bedford for working so greatly with Ultragenics. Is that as someone who's in industry who I work with a lot of regional and national developers, there are towns that they will not go to because of the difficulty in getting things done, difficulty of the boards, difficulty just to the municipalities. Like, boy, I love the location, but we're not going to do anything there because it's too difficult. Nowhere in Middlesex 3, of course, has a reputation. But right, but I'm saying it, and I think that's really a big thing. And I've spoken to developers, from North Carolina or from Colorado or from California who actually know of these towns and say, oh, I'm not going to build there. Forget it. I've already heard about how bad it is. And I think that is a really important, is to have that reputation and to say, oh, we are welcoming this here.
Well, let's repeat, none in the Middlesex 3 area.
No, of course not, no.
So I think I have time for one more quick question, and I'm going to go to the town of Chelmsford because this kind of builds upon this as well too, and they're trying to renovate, revitalize the Route 129 corridor, make it more appealing for life science companies. And any suggestions in terms of hosting contractor tours through available space, and how important is the biotech rating in a community when determining a location? Anyone? Or have you guys dealt with the biotech rating? If not, then maybe it's not important.
You're talking about the mass bio rating, right?
Yeah.
I think the mass bio rating is important. I think it, maybe Gil can speak to that a little bit. I think that having that, like Bedford has the mass bio platinum rated, which is the highest rated community. And I think it just signals to the life science community that you've done a lot of the work already to make your community attractive to life sciences. So I don't think that every community has to have that level, but working towards that in some way, I think is helpful.
Wonderful.
Because there's a silver rating, I think, and a
silver,
gold.
yeah. Well, with that, Demetrius, I don't want to take the meeting from you, but we did promise we were going to end at 1 o'clock, so we like to keep our promises. So with that, if you don't mind, I'm going to end the discussion. And thank you all for joining the conversation. Jay, Jared, Elisa, Gil, Demetrius, thank you. Great conversation. I do appreciate your time, your insights, thoughts, and I look forward to continuing the conversation because I don't think this is the end of it either. I think there's a lot we still need to do. And Gil, all conversations seem to revolve around workforce, and I would be throwing out resources for you, but I know Elisa already did. But there's a lot that our region can offer, your company and other life science companies.
And I can help with that too, Stephanie.
Absolutely. I apologize. Good to be on the call, isn't it?
Well, that and the best part is we don't have to have a follow-up webinar on the zombie apocalypse because, Jared has already said that's not going to happen with the boundary in the Middlesex 3 region.
It's not, but we need to make certain we have the workforce that we need to continue to attract more companies to the area. So with that, again, a big thank you to our panel, to our moderator, and thank you to our sponsors, AHP Architect, the BSC Group, and Reamer and Bronstein. We appreciate your support, and I look forward to continuing the conversation and future conversations as well too. Wonderful.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Well, and our next one.
Our next one is.
This is going to be on innovative housing.
So another important piece of the real estate puzzle, and make certain we have the housing for our workforce, right?
Yes, absolutely. So they can work at the biotech firms.
Wonderful. Thank you all, and everybody. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.